was alone every night with the spirits and memories hidden within those stone walls. He rarely had visitors, and the only sound he heard was the dripping of water from a rusty tap. On a cold winter night, Kamran returned to the morgue for an urgent task. The air was heavy and rainy, and the wind blowing through the broken windows carried a sound like soft moans. He thought these sensations were merely hallucinations stemming from fatigue and solitude. Kamran began cleaning, but the light started flickering. He told himself it was just a wiring issue, yet the lights went out one by one until only a few small lamps remained, plunging the morgue into complete darkness. In that darkness, Kamran heard a voice that seemed to come from the walls, calling his name. He knew he was alone, but the voices continued. He decided to search the darkness for the source of the sound. Carefully and cautiously, Kamran moved among the shadows until he reached a room where a faint light shone under the door. He grasped the doorknob and slowly opened it. Kamran entered the room with hesitant steps. The dim light from the small lamps created a space that was half lit and half dark. Everything seemed normal at first glance, but Kamran felt that something was not right. He stopped and looked around carefully. The smell of blood reached his nose, a scent that was entwined in the cold air of the morgue. Kamran looked more closely at the walls and ceiling, and saw red droplets leaking from the ceiling to the floor. He took a deep breath and said to himself, "Whose blood is this, and why is it dripping from the ceiling?" Fear and astonishment were evident in his eyes, but curiosity drove him to investigate. While Kamran was lost in thought, suddenly the lights in the room went out completely, and absolute darkness prevailed. He could hear his own breathing echoing in the utter silence. He searched for a flashlight in his pocket and turned on its light. The flashlight's beam shone in the darkness, casting shadows on the walls. Kamran shone the light on the ceiling and saw that the blood droplets were coming from a specific spot. He moved slowly towards that spot. The flashlight guided him to a corner of the room where it seemed the blood was seeping through. The walls, old and decaying, were now covered with red lines that appeared to have formed strangely. With a trembling hand, Kamran reached out to the wall and traced his finger along those lines. The blood was fresh. Suddenly, he heard a sound from behind him, the sound of footsteps approaching him softly. Kamran turned around but saw no one. Only shadows danced with the light of the flashlight. He turned back to the wall and realized that the bloody lines formed a map that seemed to point to the morgue's basement. Cameron, now battling between fear and curiosity, decided to follow the map. He moved towards a door that led to the basement. He opened the door and descended the stone steps one by one. With each step he took, the moans that echoed from the basement walls grew louder. When he reached the bottom, he found that the basement was much larger than he had imagined. Strange statues stood in corners, and ancient paintings adorned the walls. In the center of the basement there was a large table with burning candles on it, and beside it, an open book with pages that appeared to be written in blood. If you enjoyed it so far, please hit the subscribe button if you liked the video. With his heart pounding fiercely in his chest, Kamran moved towards the table. He wanted to see what was written in the book with blood-colored pages. When he reached the side of the table, his eyes fell upon the lifeless and bruised body of his colleague who had been working in the morgue. His heart trembled, and a deep fear penetrated his being. He quickly ran towards the stairs to go up to the upper floor, seeking a place where he might find more safety. Upon reaching the upper floor, he felt the heavy gaze of someone or something watching him. wanted to scream, but no sound came from his throat. When he looked carefully at a corner of the morgue, he saw a terrifying creature with a demon-possessed and horrifying human-like appearance. The creature turned to Cameron and said, "Poor Cameron, you too shall pay with your life for the deeds of your friend, just like your friend did." Cameron, now terrified, asked the creature, "Who are you and what do you want from me?" The creature looked at Cameron and said, "I am the spirit of a demonic sorcerer, and I serve Lucifer, the great devil. Your colleague is the reason for my presence in this place." Cameron asked, "My colleague? Why my colleague?" The spirit turned to Cameron and said, "He has summoned spirits in the basement of this morgue because he knew that the morgue is the best place for summoning." The spirit continued, "Now I will separate your spirit from your body and cause your death." After saying these words, Cameron felt a severe weakness, fell to the ground, and lost consciousness. Cameron lay unconscious on the ground, and in those dark moments, the spirit claiming to serve Lucifer hovered above him. Suddenly, a brilliant light filled the room, and the sound of bells ringing with supernatural force could be heard. At that moment, a middle-aged man dressed in garments that reflected his knowledge and experience in the occult entered. He was an exorcist and a skilled master of the arcane who had come to Cameron's aid. His hands were filled with symbols and talismans prepared to confront demons. The master approached the demonic spirit with firm steps and murmured powerful verses. The light emanating from his hands enveloped the spirit, pushing it back. The spirit screamed in pain and rage, but the master's power was greater. After a few moments of intense struggle, the demonic spirit disappeared with a loud cry, and a gentle light returned to the room. The master went to Cameron, and with holy water and prayers, revived him from unconsciousness. Cameron opened his eyes and looked at the master, feeling gratitude and liberation. The master told him that from now on, he must be careful and never allow darkness to enter his life again. The story of Cameron and the morgue came to a happy ending. From that day on, Cameron looked at life with new eyes, and was always thankful for the unseen forces that had saved him on that dark night.